Selina stood at the grand bay window, her fingers brushing the lace curtain aside. The glow of the chandelier in the mansion's dining hall threw half-shadows on her face, making her look strangely ethereal, part of the picture yet invisible to the bustling crowd that had gathered. Tonight was one of Derrick's many lavish business dinners, where she often felt more like furniture than a partner. Her reflection in the glass reminded her of a ghost, soft brown eyes brimming with an intelligence she rarely voiced, hair pinned neatly back in a low bun. She was only 28, yet her eyes carried an older woman's weariness. Derrick, her husband, was front and center of attention. His booming laughter and confident handshakes punctuated the air. People rushed to greet him as he showed them around the sprawling home, pointing out paintings and expensive artifacts he'd purchased during trips abroad. Selina took a deep breath, smoothing out a small wrinkle in her pale blue dress. She had picked it carefully, hoping it would catch Derrick's eye. But so far, he hadn't even bothered to look her way. Her heart sank, though she tried to keep her composure. A waiter passed by with a tray of champagne flutes. Selina reached for one, more out of needing something to do with her hands than any desire to drink. The room smelled of fresh lilies, polished oak, and the expensive perfume of the guests. She felt a bit dizzy from the mixture, or perhaps it was her nerves. "Excuse me, are you one of the staff here?" a middle-aged woman in pearls asked, her tone polite but condescending. Selina opened her mouth to respond, but the woman immediately placed an empty glass on the tray Selina held, not waiting for an answer. Selina stammered, but the woman had already turned to talk to someone else. In that moment, Derrick's voice reverberated across the hall. "Friends, partners, esteemed guests," he boomed. "Welcome! Tonight's gathering is to celebrate the expansion of my real estate firm. We couldn't have done it without your unwavering support." A round of applause followed. Selina's face burned as she realized that not once had he even mentioned her name. Soon, groups of people formed circles. Selina hovered close, but no one offered a spot for her to step in. It was always the same, she was there, but somehow, she was invisible. She could hear murmurs, "Who is she? Or is that Derrick's assistant?" She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, fighting the urge to run upstairs. She reminded herself to hold on, because disappearing physically might confirm that she was inconsequential. Near the hallway leading to the kitchen, Selina overheard one of Derrick's associates. "Your wife couldn't make it tonight," the man joked. Derrick only chuckled, not bothering to correct him. Selina's throat tightened, and she slipped away through the side door leading to a small garden alcove, her glass still half full. A swirl of winter air greeted her. It was cold enough to make her shiver, but the fresh bite in the air felt more comforting than the stifling warmth inside. Alone under the starlit sky, she breathed deeply, letting her exhaled breath linger like a small cloud. A strong wave of determination came over her for a moment. She told herself, "One day, they'll know my name too." Yet that flicker of resolve was quickly replaced by an even stronger wave of doubt. She took one last sip, placed the glass on a stone ledge, and returned to the house. Inside, the party was as loud as ever, but no one noticed she had been gone. She slipped through the crowd like a phantom, heading upstairs toward her attic sanctuary. It was a world where her voice truly existed, on paper, in the words she wrote to keep herself alive. The attic was her refuge. Dusty beams, stacked boxes of old possessions, and a single skylight. That was all. Yet for Selina, it was more than enough. With each step up the wooden ladder, she felt the tension in her chest loosen. She inhaled deeply, then lit the small lamp on a desk that wobbled if you pressed its left corner. She pulled out her journal, a worn leather-bound book with yellowing pages, and began writing. Today, Derrick hosted another dinner. As always, I was invisible. Is it strange that the place I feel most visible is in this journal? One day, they'll hear me. But for now, these pages are my only witnesses. Her pen scratched softly against the paper. Occasionally, the sound of laughter drifted up through the vents. Guests were still toasting, still ignoring the fact that Derrick had a wife. She closed her eyes, letting the words flow from her mind to the page without filtering or worrying about grammar. It was the only way to keep her spirit from crumbling. She remembered when she was a young college student, confident, outspoken, majoring in political science because she believed in justice. She wanted to help those who felt voiceless. How ironic that I became voiceless myself. That thought struck her, and she wrote it down. On the wall, she kept pinned pages from old diaries. Snippets of her younger self: I will become someone strong or never settle for less than respect. She often read them back like a conversation with a friend she used to be. A sudden noise from downstairs made her jump. Derrick was shouting instructions at the cleaning staff. He had always had a short temper, but it had grown worse since his business expanded. Standing, she walked over to the skylight. A sliver of moonlight illuminated her face. She saw her reflection in the glass, soft eyes, a trembling mouth. She placed her hand against the cold glass and whispered, "They'll hear me," before heading back to her desk. She wrote several more paragraphs, detailing her frustrations and her dreams. She wrote about feeling caged, about the anger that sometimes flared within her. Perhaps that anger was a precursor to the fire she needed to break free. Her journal was now a testament to her evolution, from a hopeful girl to a woman on the brink of finding her lost voice. As she set the pen down, a quiet resolve surged within her. These diaries weren't just a collection of pages, they were stepping stones to something bigger. She just didn't know yet how or when that bigger moment would come. The next morning, Selina was in the kitchen, carefully whipping eggs for Derrick's breakfast. The clinking of the whisk against the bowl was methodical, almost soothing. She had grown accustomed to early mornings, ensuring everything was perfect for him: his tie laid out, his coffee hot, his eggs fluffy. Derrick strode in, scanning a series of emails on his phone. He barely acknowledged her. Selina swallowed her disappointment and turned to place his breakfast on the marble island. "They're sunny side up, just like you like them," she said softly, forcing a polite smile. He nodded curtly. "I have a meeting in half an hour with the board of directors. Make sure my documents are ready." He didn't bother to look at her, tapping incessantly on his phone. Selina's pulse quickened. She'd spent part of the night proofreading those documents. "They're printed and in a folder on your desk." He finally glanced up, seeming to notice her as if she were a fixture on the wall. Then the doorbell rang. Moments later, 3 of his business partners entered, unannounced. They filled the living room with talk of acquisitions and expansions. Curious, Selina peeked around the corner, but Derrick waved her off as though shooing a bothersome cat. She shrank back, pressing against the wall. She could still hear their conversation. "We're thinking of buying that piece of land up north," said one partner. "But the locals are refusing to move." "Offer them a token." "Or scare them," Derrick answered dismissively. "They'll fold." Selina frowned. Something about that tone made her uneasy. Moments later, Derrick called her into the living room. She entered hesitantly, greeting the men with a polite nod. "Gentlemen, this is Selina," Derrick said, his voice dripping with a subtle condescension. "My wife. She handles the, administrative side at home." A thin smile crossed his lips. One of the men extended a reluctant handshake. "Pleasure," he said, though his eyes quickly returned to Derrick. Derrick clasped Selina's shoulder, pulling her toward him. "So, how about that coffee, dear?" She bit her tongue and forced a gentle nod, heading to the kitchen. But halfway there, she heard him chuckling with them. "She's just a housewife, no real value in the business sense, you understand." His words stopped her in her tracks. It was like a physical blow, an invisible slap. Her cheeks burned, heart pounding as if it might leap from her chest. A housewife with no real value. She closed her eyes, inhaling through her nose. In that moment, a cold clarity washed over her. This was no life partnership, she was a prop. She felt tears threaten but willed them away. She would not cry before him or his cronies. Returning to the living room with a tray of coffee cups, she kept her face neutral. She handed each man a cup, ignoring Derrick's eyes on her. Inside, something had snapped, tearing a tiny hole in the fragile emotional armor she wore. And once torn, that hole could only grow bigger. A week later, Selina woke up early to prep for what she hoped would be a special evening, their 4th wedding anniversary. She tried to push aside the memory of Derrick's insulting words. Tonight, she would attempt a final olive branch, a chance for them to reconnect. She spent the day carefully selecting fresh flowers, roses, lilies, and baby's breath, arranging them into a large centerpiece on the dining table. She marinated a roast, prepared sides with meticulous precision, and chose a soft background playlist of piano instrumentals. By dusk, she had transformed the dining area into a romantic setting with candles casting dancing lights on the walls. She wore a simple but elegant white dress, one that accentuated her figure in a modest way, and fixed her hair in loose curls. She felt nervous, as though anticipating an important performance. Time passed. 7 o'clock became 8. 8 became 9. No sign of Derrick. With each passing minute, her hope deflated. She paced around the room, occasionally glancing at her phone. She had texted him earlier, "Happy anniversary, can't wait to celebrate tonight." No reply. At 9:30, she heard the front door open. Her heart lifted momentarily until she realized it was just the housekeeper returning from her day off. Selina mustered a weak smile. "He's not home yet," she explained needlessly. Her stomach churned. The roast was cold, the candles had burned down to flickering nubs. Finally, at almost 11 p.m., her phone buzzed. It was a social media post from Derrick's official account, celebrating the successful launch of our new property line. #expansion #success. A photo accompanied it, Derrick with his assistant, champagne glasses raised, both smiling widely in a well-lit hotel lounge. The tightness in Selina's chest felt suffocating. So this was why he was absent. Their anniversary meant nothing compared to his business pursuits. She stared at the roast on the table, the carefully selected flowers, the meticulously arranged candles. Tears welled up. This was the night she had pinned her last shred of hope upon, that maybe he could be the man she once believed in. In a daze, she sat down at the table alone. She picked at a bite of the now lukewarm roast. The taste was bitter, though she had seasoned it perfectly. She swallowed once, then set down her fork. A single tear slipped down her cheek. She blew out the remaining candles, walked to the sink, and let the tears flow freely in the darkness of the kitchen. The last petal of her old love, indeed, had wilted. Days later, Selina found herself at Derrick's home office desk, typing an email for a small NGO where she hoped to volunteer. Writing had always been her strength, and she wanted to do something meaningful outside this suffocating marriage, even if it was just part-time volunteer work. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating. Would Derrick object? Absolutely. But she felt compelled to try. She opened a new tab to double-check the NGO's contact info. A pop-up from Derrick's cloud storage system appeared, prompting a file sync. Her eyes flicked to the folder names, mostly cryptic references like Project Aurora, Landproc, litigation docs. Usually, she wouldn't pry. But a subfolder labeled Confidential caught her attention. Biting her lip, she clicked it. A slew of documents loaded, feasibility reports, bank statements, property maps. At first, it looked standard for a real estate business. But the more she scrolled, the more something felt off. She clicked on a file titled Land Grab Memos. As she scanned the text, her heart pounded, references to farmland acquisitions, intimidation of local communities, payoffs to corrupt local officials, and strategic demolition plans. Excerpts from the document. Ensure final eviction notices are delivered without media coverage. Local protesters to be handled by private security, no police involvement to avoid official records. Sensitive areas near water source must bypass environmental screening via personal contact in government office. Her hand flew to her mouth. This was more than shady business, it was illegal and predatory. She felt nauseous, remembering a conversation from Chapter 3 when Derrick and his associates casually discussed scaring locals into leaving their land. "Dear God," she whispered. "What has he done?" She clicked on another file, labeled Estimated Profit Projections. The numbers were astronomical, millions of dollars in expected returns, all built on the backs of displaced families. Shock soon morphed into anger. She realized that Derrick had been lying to everyone. He had always presented himself as a respectable businessman, but this was pure villainy. A swirl of conflicting emotions attacked her. Should she confront him? She had no illusions about how that would go. Her mind spun, searching for what to do next. Do I have the courage to do something about this? She remembered her once passionate younger self, the one who believed in justice. That part of her stirred, an ember waiting to be fanned into flames. Gently, she closed the folder and logged out. Her heart thudded in her chest, as though hammering out a question, what now? That evening, Selina paced in the attic, the discovered files weighing heavily on her mind. She decided to reach out to someone she trusted, her childhood friend, Mayowa. They had grown up together, lost touch after college, but reconnected sporadically through social media. She remembered Mayowa's posts, investigative journalism, fighting corruption, giving voice to the oppressed. If anyone could guide her, it was Mayowa. She dialed Mayowa's number, her fingers trembling. After a few rings, a warm, familiar voice answered, "Selina?" "Wow, it's been a while." Selina let out a shaky breath. "Mayowa, I have something important, really important. I need your help." They arranged to meet at a small coffee shop downtown. Selina arrived early, wearing a plain black hoodie to avoid drawing attention. She watched the door anxiously until Mayowa stepped in, taller and more confident than she remembered, with a well-worn satchel slung over her shoulder. They hugged briefly, the comfort of old friendship warming Selina's tense form. Over mugs of steaming cappuccino, Selina leaned in and spoke quietly, "Mayowa, I found documents, really incriminating stuff, on Derrick's computer. Illegal land acquisitions, intimidation, environmental hazards. He's bulldozing entire communities for profit." Mayowa's eyes widened. "That's huge. If what you're saying is accurate, it could expose not just Derrick but an entire network of corruption." She sipped her coffee, her mind clearly spinning with possibilities. "But are you sure you're ready for what this means? If you blow the whistle, you won't just anger him. You'll make powerful enemies." Selina's stomach fluttered with fear, but her resolve was stronger. "He's already turned me into a nobody in my own home," she said, voice trembling. "I can't just stand by anymore. Real people are suffering because of his greed." Mayowa reached out, placing a hand on Selina's. "I can help you. But you have to think carefully. Once we set this in motion, your life won't be the same." Selina paused, remembering all the times she'd kept quiet, her wedding night, business dinners, humiliating remarks, a forgotten anniversary. She exhaled slowly. "I understand. I just need to figure out the next step." Mayowa nodded. "All right. First, make sure you secure those files. Make copies. Then, we need to find a safe channel to leak them. But there's no turning back once it's out there." Selina glanced down at her cup, swirling the remaining coffee. Her reflection rippled. She saw a woman on the brink of transformation. "I'll do it," she said softly. "I have to." The seeds of fire had been planted. And they were about to spark into a blaze she could not have imagined. A few days later, Selina followed Mayowa's advice and began volunteering at a small NGO under a pseudonym, Lena Sod. The NGO's focus was on protecting communities impacted by corporate greed, exactly the kind of cause Derrick's empire threatened to destroy. She used a cheap prepaid phone and avoided sharing her real name. The NGO's makeshift office was set up in a modest trailer on the outskirts of the city. Posters of protest slogans lined the walls, and a handful of dedicated volunteers huddled around laptops and piles of paperwork. The atmosphere buzzed with a strange mix of hope and desperation. "Hello," Selina said, approaching a thin, bespectacled woman who seemed to be in charge. "I'm Lena Saad. I'd like to help, if you'll have me." The woman offered a tired but genuine smile. "We can use every hand we can get. I'm Tessa, the coordinator here. Can you write? We need press releases, blog posts, anything that can get our message out." Selina nodded. "Yes, I can." She didn't mention her background, she didn't dare. But she knew she had the writing skills. She spent the next few days drafting letters to local officials, collecting testimonials from displaced families, and updating the NGO's social media pages with stories of injustice and forced evictions. She worked until her eyes burned, fueled by a newfound sense of purpose. Late one evening, as she was about to wrap up, she heard hushed voices in the neighboring room. "Derrick said it again," someone said angrily. "Now he's targeting farmland near the water supply." Her chest tightened. "He's going after new victims?" Determined to see the human toll of Derrick's operations, Selina visited one of the camps where displaced families were temporarily housed. It was a bleak place, makeshift tents, limited water, children with haunted expressions. She walked among them like a ghost, overshadowed by the magnitude of suffering. Her heart squeezed painfully, guilt gnawing at her for being associated, even unwittingly, with the man responsible for this misery. A mother noticed her. "Are you new here? You look so different," she said, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion. Selina hesitated. She couldn't blow her cover. But she managed a soft reply, "I'm just here to help." The mother's baby whimpered, and she rocked him gently. "If you ever see that monster who did this to us, tell him we're not going anywhere." Selina swallowed hard, nodding. Inside, the flame of resolve grew hotter. She would not be a silent accomplice. News spread within the camp that a volunteer had ties to the wealthy developer. Whispers circled, though no one could quite confirm it. The families only knew that she was different, quiet yet strangely empathetic. One afternoon, Selina found herself writing a scathing blog post against land corruption, referencing the hidden documents she'd seen on Derrick's laptop without naming him. As she typed away on a donated laptop, a mother approached with a phone. "Could you say something on camera for us? We're trying to compile video testimonies to send to government officials." Selina froze. She had never appeared on camera before, not even under her pseudonym. But something in the woman's pleading eyes made it impossible to refuse. "All right," she whispered, stepping into a small makeshift area where they were filming. The camera rolled, a volunteer behind it said, "Whenever you're ready." Selina exhaled. "We're standing in a camp that should never exist," she began, voice trembling but unwavering. "Families have been forced off their lands. This injustice is real, it's personal, and it's ongoing. People are losing their homes, their livelihoods, to corporate greed." She found herself speaking with more fervor, the words flowing as though they had been locked inside her all her life. "I stand with these families. Even if the person responsible has power and resources, that doesn't mean they're unstoppable." One of the mothers recognized her face from social media pictures of a fancy fundraiser. Her eyes widened. "You're his wife, aren't you? I've seen your photo before. You're Derrick's wife." Silence fell. The volunteer filming nearly dropped the camera in shock. Selina's cheeks burned as she weighed whether to confirm or deny. Deciding to stand firm in her truth, she met the camera's lens directly. "I am. But I'm not him. I'm here because what he's doing is wrong." The volunteer behind the camera captured every word. The honesty in Selina's voice was palpable. Within hours, that footage spread across social media like wildfire. Most viewers didn't know her real name yet, but they recognized the face of Derrick's wife. Comments poured in, "Is that the developer's spouse speaking out? Unbelievable. She's helping the victims of his projects. The shift was seismic. People were intrigued, some even supportive. A small group criticized her. Where was she all this time? But a far larger wave was curious to hear more. For the first time, Selina's voice reached beyond the attic or her personal journal. The words she had been silently honing for years now reverberated in the public sphere. And though fear gnawed at her, she also felt a surge of pride she hadn't experienced in a long time. The next day, Selina's phone vibrated with dozens of missed calls from Derrick. She stared at it, heart pounding, but let it ring out. She was volunteering in the NGO's supply room, sorting donations for the displaced families. On the battered TV in the corner, a news broadcast played a snippet of her speaking. The headline read, "Real estate tycoon's wife speaks out? Mysterious volunteer criticizes husband's business." The door to the trailer slammed open, revealing Derrick, flanked by two of his associates. All conversation halted. Tessa, the NGO coordinator, bristled. "You can't barge in here. This is private property." Derrick's eyes zeroed in on Selina, ignoring Tessa completely. "You," he spat. "We're going home. Now." Selina felt a chill run down her spine but held her ground. "I'm not going with you," she said quietly. He glared at her, struggling to control his temper in front of so many witnesses. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You've embarrassed me, insulted our entire company. The media is all over this." Other volunteers stepped forward protectively. Derrick's associate sneered, looking ready to force Selina outside. Tessa stood her ground too. "She's free to stay if she wants," Tessa said, her voice shaking with anger. Selina met Derrick's gaze, steady for once. "You don't own my silence anymore." His face contorted with rage, but he forced a tight smile, presumably to avoid a scene that could go viral if anyone was filming. "Fine," he said, voice trembling. "Don't come crawling back when you realize you have nothing without me." Selina took a shaky breath. "I'd rather have nothing than live with your corruption." For a moment, no one moved. The tension was so thick, it felt like the air itself might crack. Finally, Derrick spun on his heel and marched out, slamming the door behind him. Tessa placed a comforting hand on Selina's shoulder. "We've got a spare room in the volunteer shelter if you need a place to stay." Selina nodded, tears beginning to form. But they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of a quiet victory, however small. For the first time in a long while, she had stood up for herself. The volunteer shelter was a simple building with chipped paint and leaky faucets, but to Selina, it felt like a sanctuary. She shared a room with another volunteer, an older woman named Grace who used to be a social worker. At night, they often swapped stories, each finding solace in the other's experiences. One evening, Selina helped a young girl named Amira compose an essay for a school competition. Amira was displaced from her original home because of Derrick's development project. Despite living in a cramped shelter, Amira dreamed of winning the national public speaking contest, hoping it might pave the way for a scholarship. Selina listened patiently as Amira read her draft. "Is it okay if I talk about losing my home?" the girl asked nervously. "Absolutely," Selina encouraged. "You should speak your truth. That's the most powerful thing you have." They worked late into the night, refining every line of Amira's speech, injecting clarity and passion into the text. On the morning of the competition, Selina walked with her to the local auditorium, offering last-minute words of encouragement. The result was astonishing. Amira delivered her speech flawlessly, capturing the judges' hearts. She won first prize. Local media covered it, featuring a short interview. When asked how she managed to write such a compelling piece, Amira turned to Selina, who stood backstage, and smiled, pointing her out. "Miss Selina helped me. She believed in me when I was too scared to believe in myself." A reporter quickly connected the dots. "Selina? Is that the same woman who's rumored to be the wife of Derrick, the real estate mogul?" The camera panned to Selina, who stood rooted to the spot. Her eyes darted around, but there was no escaping it. She had been outed, again. But this time, in the context of a victory for a young girl who represented everything good in the world. The moment felt strangely triumphant, the polar opposite of what Derrick had put her through. The local news cycle replayed Amira's victory speech multiple times. In an on-the-spot interview, Selina was asked if she had any comment regarding her relationship to Derrick. She spoke softly yet firmly, "I can't talk about my personal situation right now. But I'm proud of Amira, and I'm proud of all the families who fight for their rights." In a matter of hours, #Selina trended on social media in the local community, and her story began to permeate the national conversation. It was a small but significant step toward a much larger transformation. News outlets started requesting interviews. At first, Selina hesitated. She was still technically married to Derrick, and she feared the backlash. But the NGO staff, along with Mayowa, convinced her that a carefully planned interview could amplify the voices of the displaced families and protect her from further intimidation. She agreed to a televised interview with a reputable journalist known for tackling social justice issues. On the day of the broadcast, Selina arrived at the station, nerves jangling. She wore a simple blouse and skirt, her hair neatly tied back. Producers fussed over the lighting and microphones. She could hear her heartbeat drumming in her ears as she took her seat across from the journalist. The cameras rolled, the bright studio lights shining down on her. "Good evening, and welcome," the journalist began. "Tonight, we're joined by Selina, wife of property magnate Derrick, and a volunteer with the NGO Shielded Hearts. Selina, thank you for agreeing to speak with us." Selina swallowed hard, her mouth dry. "Thank you for having me," she said, forcing her voice to remain steady. "Your appearance in that viral video surprised everyone," the journalist continued. "You mentioned that you do not support your husband's business practices. Can you clarify?" Selina took a breath. "Yes. While I will not name him directly, or go into detail about his operations in a way that compromises ongoing investigations, I can say that the emotional abuse I endured gave me a unique perspective on how power can be misused, both at home and in the public sphere." The journalist leaned forward. "Emotional abuse, you say? Could you elaborate?" Her throat felt tight. She recalled the humiliating remarks, the neglect, the sense of invisibility. She carefully chose her words so as not to trigger a lawsuit, but she needed to be truthful enough to make an impact. "For a long time, I felt powerless. I was belittled, made to feel like my opinions didn't matter. In parallel, I discovered documents suggesting corruption and land grabs that displaced real families. I couldn't remain silent anymore." A hush fell in the studio. The journalist let the gravity of her words linger before asking, "So you're essentially blowing the whistle on wrongdoing, at great personal risk?" Selina's eyes flickered with a new determination. "Yes. If staying silent means enabling harm to innocent people, then I can't do that. It's not who I am." Viewers around the country witnessed a woman, once invisible, articulating her truth under glaring lights. The effect was immediate and profound. Social media buzzed with supportive messages. Others questioned her motives. But one thing was certain, her voice was now impossible to ignore. The interview triggered a cascade of events. The government's Anti-Corruption Bureau took notice, as did an array of advocacy groups. Within days, Selina was contacted by an official offering whistleblower protection, provided she could submit valid evidence. Fear coursed through her. Accepting meant crossing a line she could never return from. But the alternative was living in constant dread of Derrick's wrath. Her decision came swiftly. She handed over the incriminating files she had copied. In a small, dimly lit government office, she sat across from an investigator. He peered at the documents, eyes widening at the scope of the corruption. "These are serious allegations," he said. "We'll have to move quickly on this." Selina nodded, clasping her hands in her lap to hide their trembling. "I understand." The next few days were a blur of statements, signed affidavits, and background checks. Derrick's name soon dominated the news headlines, his image plastered next to words like land scandal and illegal evictions. He attempted to deny the accusations, calling Selina unstable and vengeful. But the evidence was too overwhelming to dismiss. Meanwhile, at the NGO, Selina noticed a new sense of tension among the volunteers. While most rallied behind her, some worried about the negative attention that might fall on them. Tessa, the coordinator, remained unflinchingly supportive. "We stand with you. You've given these families a chance at real justice." Selina moved into a secure apartment arranged by the whistleblower program. It was small and sparse, but it offered her something she hadn't felt in a long time: safety. She missed the friendly faces at the shelter, though they visited often, bringing small gifts and heartwarming stories of progress. One evening, Mayowa called. "How are you holding up?" Selina sighed. "I'm coping. It's surreal, though. My life turned upside down overnight." "Hang in there," Mayowa said gently. "It only gets tougher, but you're doing the right thing. The public is on your side." Selina exhaled, wiping away a tear she hadn't realized was forming. "I hope so," she whispered. Within a week, social media exploded with the hashtag Stand With Selena. It began as a small show of support among women's advocacy groups but quickly gained mainstream traction. Online, people shared their own stories of emotional abuse, gaslighting, and the feeling of invisibility. A movement was forming, a grassroots surge of empathy and solidarity. Celebrities tweeted, proud to see women like Selina stand up for what's right. Hashtag Stand With Selena. Popular podcasts discussed her story, dissecting her bravery and drawing parallels to systemic issues of patriarchy and corporate greed. Influencers posted pictures with placards reading the slogan. Selina watched in astonishment as she scrolled through her phone, seeing hundreds of thousands of posts. She realized that her personal ordeal had tapped into something universal, a deep well of collective outrage and hope. She wasn't just standing up for herself, she was giving voice to countless others who felt powerless in their circumstances. One day, Grace from the shelter forwarded Selina a video montage compiled by survivors of emotional abuse. The final frame read, "If she could leave, so can I." Moved to tears, Selina recognized how her private struggle was now fueling public courage. In a heartfelt moment, she made her first tweet under her real name: "For every person who thinks they have no voice, you do. And the world is listening." Hashtag Stand With Selena. Within minutes, it went viral. But with support also came trolls. Derrick's supporters labeled her a liar, an opportunist. They flooded her mentions with hate. She tried to brush it off, but each cruel word felt like a small stab. Thankfully, the wave of positive messages overshadowed the negative. Women from all walks of life resonated with her story, sharing experiences of how they, too, had once felt unheard. Selina realized the movement was bigger than Derrick's scandal. It was about giving people permission to own their truths, no matter how small or large the stage. As hashtag Stand With Selena gained momentum, law enforcement intensified its investigation into Derrick's empire. For weeks, he managed to dodge arrest by leveraging high-profile lawyers and well-placed bribes. But the constant media scrutiny and public pressure were unstoppable forces. One fateful afternoon, Derrick decided to hold a press conference to proclaim his innocence. He stood on a temporary stage outside his corporate headquarters, cameras rolling, reporters jostling for position. "I am a businessman who invests in communities," he declared, feigning sincerity. "Any suggestion of wrongdoing is a vicious rumor spread by," he paused, presumably to choose his words carefully, "individuals with personal vendettas." A murmur ran through the crowd. Just then, a team of investigators and police officers pushed through, approaching the stage. A hush fell. With cameras capturing every angle, the lead investigator handed Derrick a warrant. "Derrick, you are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and multiple counts of illegal land seizure." Reporters erupted in shouts, microphones thrust forward. Derrick's face twisted in disbelief, turning red with fury. He lunged toward the nearest camera. She ruined me. Selina destroyed my reputation, he screamed, voice cracking with desperation. A young reporter near the front responded, her voice steady. She saved others, she said, her microphone capturing every word. Flashes went off. Derrick was handcuffed and led away. The final images broadcast live, a powerful man brought low, undone by the woman he had once dismissed as powerless. Across the city, in her small whistleblower apartment, Selina watched the scene on TV. Her hands trembled, tears sliding down her cheeks. It was a bittersweet moment, triumph tempered by the painful reminder of what she had once endured. In the aftermath of Derrick's arrest, the story became international news. Larger outlets, including global NGOs and human rights organizations, picked it up, exploring the broader themes of corruption and the empowerment of marginalized voices. One evening, Selina received a phone call from an unfamiliar number with a Swiss country code. She answered cautiously, expecting perhaps a journalist. Instead, a gentle voice introduced herself as an official from the UN Women's Council in Geneva. "We've been following your story," the official explained. "You embody the courage it takes to stand up for human rights, especially as someone who overcame systemic and personal oppression. We'd be honored if you would consider speaking at our upcoming conference on resilience, reform, and invisible abuse." Selina's eyes widened. The UN Women's Council? That was a stage she never imagined stepping onto. Memories of her old self, the young dreamer who wanted to fight for justice, washed over her. She felt both humbled and terrified. After a long pause, she said softly, "I'm not sure I'm the right person. I'm not a professional activist or anything. I just did what I had to do." The official chuckled warmly. "That's exactly why we need you. Real stories have the power to inspire real change." Selina closed her eyes, heart pounding. "I've come this far," she thought. Out loud, she said, "I think I'm ready." With that acceptance, her life took yet another unanticipated turn, a new chapter that might bring her voice to the global stage. A month later, Selina found herself in Geneva, standing backstage at the UN Women's Council conference. She wore a simple black pantsuit, feeling both elegant and nervous. The auditorium was vast, seats filled with delegates from around the world, ambassadors, activists, journalists, and survivors of various forms of abuse. As she stood behind the curtain, she could hear the keynote speaker finishing up. Polite applause echoed through the hall. A staff member signaled that she was next. Her stomach churned. What if I forget my speech? What if they think I'm not qualified enough? Taking a steadying breath, Selina glanced at Mayowa, who had flown in to support her. Mayowa flashed a thumbs up. In that moment, a surge of confidence ran through Selina. "I have a story worth telling." She stepped onto the stage. A hush descended over the audience as she approached the podium. For a few seconds, she simply looked out at the sea of expectant faces. The lights were bright, but she felt an odd calm. "I was once afraid of being seen," she began, her voice echoing through the auditorium. "I lived in a beautiful house, shared with a powerful man, yet I felt invisible. I thought my story didn't matter. But the world made room for my truth." She spoke of emotional abuse, of how easy it was to dismiss the quieter forms of oppression, and of the ultimate discovery of her husband's corruption. She talked about the displaced families, the courageous volunteers, and the unstoppable wave of solidarity that rose from social media to real-life activism. Her voice shook at times, but it never faltered. She concluded, "If someone like me, someone who once believed she was powerless, can spark change, then imagine what we can all accomplish if we stand together." I hope this inspires you to never underestimate the quiet voice. Often, it carries the loudest truth. The auditorium erupted in applause. Some stood, clapping with genuine admiration. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment of a once invisible wife now shining under the global spotlight. Returning home felt surreal. Selina's whistleblower status still provided her a secure location, but she now had far more opportunities than she ever dreamed. Bolstered by the momentum of the global conference, she decided to co-found an NGO devoted to helping women break their silence. She called it Voice, an acronym for Victims of Injustice Can Emerge. Grace, Tessa, and Mayowa all joined as board members, each bringing their unique expertise. They secured a modest building in a lower-income neighborhood, once a disused community center. Selina felt a thrill of excitement as she stepped inside the dusty hall. "We'll refurbish, organize workshops, offer legal aid, counseling, whatever is needed," she said, her voice filled with determination. Within weeks, volunteers painted the walls, installed computers, and set up a hotline for women needing immediate assistance. They also created a small library of resources for emotional abuse survivors. A banner hung at the entrance, proclaiming the NGO's motto, "Your story matters, even if you whisper it." When the doors finally opened, a steady stream of women, of all ages and backgrounds, began to visit. Some simply wanted to talk. Others sought legal guidance. All found a listening ear and practical support. In late afternoon after a busy day, Selina sat at her new desk, worn from daily hustle but glowing with fulfillment. She recalled her quiet attic, where she once poured her thoughts into a journal. She had never imagined that those hidden words would evolve into a fully realized mission, giving countless others the confidence to speak up. One day, while attending to a walk-in visitor, Selina received a note from the front desk volunteer. "A letter came for you. From the men's correctional facility." The note fluttered in her hand, and her stomach tightened. She knew who it was from even before opening it. Derrick. She had followed the news. He was in prison awaiting trial. Even though she had mentally distanced herself from him, the emotional scars still lingered. She left the letter unopened on her desk for the entire day. That evening, curiosity got the better of her, and she slipped into her office alone. Carefully, she tore open the envelope. Derrick's handwriting was neat, formal. "Selina, I've had time to think. I would like to see you, to talk. We have a lot to settle, and I believe you owe me an explanation for what you did. Derrick." She scoffed at the final line. An explanation for what I did? She marveled at how he still believed she was accountable to him, even from prison. Anger churned in her, but she also felt a tug of pity. She mulled over what to do. In the end, she wrote a short response. "Derrick, we have nothing left to discuss. You don't talk to me. You talk about me. That ends now. Selina." She sealed it in an envelope and posted it the next day. Her hands shook slightly as she dropped it in the mailbox, but she felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The last remnants of his hold on her had broken. Selina's growing public profile attracted the interest of a major publishing house. A representative contacted her, expressing interest in her life story. At first, the notion overwhelmed her. Writing a memoir felt too personal, too raw. But after deliberation and encouragement from her support circle, she agreed. If sharing her journey could help even one person escape their cage, it would be worth it. She titled the memoir, "The Power They Forgot I Had." For months, she worked late into the night, meticulously recounting her experiences, her once idealistic youth, the slow descent into emotional captivity, her discovery of Derrick's crimes, and the difficult but liberating path to exposing him. She wrote about the sleepless nights, the heartbreak, the fear, and the flickers of hope that kept her going. When the book was announced, pre-orders skyrocketed. #Stand With Selena readers expressed excitement, calling it the anthem of our generation's silent battles. Critiques from some corners labeled it sensationalist. But Selina had learned not to let such negativity define her. On the morning the book was officially released, Selina woke up to a phone buzzing with news alerts. Debut author's memoir shoots to #1 on bestseller lists. Stunned, she looked at Mayowa, who had spent the night in the spare room. "This is unreal," she said, her voice trembling with gratitude. Mayowa grinned wide. It's real, and you earned it. In that moment, Selina felt the magnitude of her transformation. She was no longer the quiet, invisible wife. She was a published author, a founder of an NGO, and a symbol of resilience for so many who had once seen no way out. A year after Derrick's downfall, Selina found herself on the stage of a nationally televised award show. She had been nominated for an honor that recognized civic activism and social impact. The ceremony took place in a grand theater, opulent with velvet drapes and golden fixtures. The audience included celebrities, dignitaries, and everyday people who had come to celebrate individuals making a real difference. Backstage, Selina felt a rush of nerves as the category was announced. This year's award for social bravery goes to Selina. Applause thundered. She stood, heart racing, and made her way to the stage. Spotlights followed her, cameras capturing her every step. The presenter beamed at her. "This isn't just for bravery," he said, gesturing to the trophy. "It's for every woman who thought she had no power until she spoke." Selina reached the microphone, glancing out at the crowd, tears of humility gathering in her eyes. "When I started this journey, I was alone in an attic, scribbling in a journal because I had no voice. I never imagined a day like this. But this award isn't mine alone. It belongs to the volunteers, the journalists, the displaced families, the supporters on social media. It belongs to every person who refused to let me stay invisible. Thank you." The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Flashbulbs burst, capturing the image of Selina holding the trophy aloft. The chants of her name, Selina, Selina, rolled across the auditorium, reverberating in a rhythmic cadence that seemed to echo the heartbeat of a movement. In that electrifying moment, she stood fully in her power, no longer overshadowed by anyone else's ambition or cruelty. She was the woman the world rallied behind, the one they never saw coming, and she was finally, truly free. The end.